We're back with Misericorde. Let it play out, man. We're back with Misericorde. We're going to be filming episode 11 and 12 tonight. Starting off, meeting up with Darcy to tend to some sheep where we left off. Started today's stream having some conversations about upcoming structural ideas as far as what to do with these Sunday stories going forward. And so if you're watching this a long time from now, major changes may have happened and major changes may not have happened. I don't know. All I know is thank you everybody who is here live, hanging out, being a part of this, and taking that time to talk with me and kind of have a meeting of the minds about this. And we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens because I love doing this. It's very, very, very fun. Let's get back into things here. Got a couple episodes to do before my tea gets cold. Misericorde Volume 1. Starting off March 9th. Yeah. Okay. Let me get a history really fast. Just a real quick question. They were just books. What did she have to tell me what to do? Was I so cowed by her that I feared what she might do if I touched her precious books? Set one of them out of order. You know, one of those keep tea hot. I have a thermos for it. I also have one of those ember mugs, but they kind of freak me out a little bit. Darcy, feeling under the weather, can't make it to the library today. Oh, right. Hedwig was going to start snooping in the library and go behind Eustace's back in response to Eustace being sus and saying, quit with your prying, quit with your prodding, acting in that giant suit of armor in the Misericorde the night before. She suggested I take you with me to watch the sheep today. Come on, it's time for sheep. All right. Darcy beamed and beckoned for me to follow her. Snapshots should be working perfectly, I do believe. Let me just make sure if somebody wants to send a picture just so that I can be sure. In fact, let me do it just because that would happen. It does work. It does work, so we are good. All right, here we go. We went down the stairs toward the cloister. Charity and Marta had left, presumably to go check in with the wine in the cellars. The sunlight was somewhat diminished. The fog was gone, but I could now see rain clouds gathering ahead. We took a right at the bottom of the stairs and continued past the rectory and kitchens. It's a bit of a hike, if that's all right. Oh, is it? I'm quite stiff today, I'm afraid.
Have you been to the hospitalum? It's more or less the same distance, but in this direction.
No, I haven't. More lies, but it was either that or explain to Darcy that I had sprinted from the hospitalum last night. What was that I said earlier about not being a liar, though? I'm sure I'll manage, though. We left through another archway in the surrounding wall. I was beginning to wonder what the point of the abbey wall was in the first place. Anyone, it seemed, could come from either direction if they fancied it. For a moment, I wondered if it was worth telling the superior that it would be impossible to fairly accuse anyone of murdering Catherine when just about any old pervert could have walked into this place. Darcy had not been exaggerating about the walk. On this side of the abbey, there were no gentle slopes and hillocks. There were hills, and for the first time it truly struck me that Lynbarrow Tor was more or less a mountain range. As we made our way over impossibly green grass, wind whipped our robes around. I think Darcy may have been trying to chat, but it was impossible to hear anything clearly over the gusts of wind and the flapping fabric. It was truly dizzying up here. I could see the village and the lake, as I did on the way to the hospitalum, but they were utterly dwarfed by the hills surrounding them. It was beautiful and terrifying. I had never felt so small. Eventually, we crested a particularly sharp incline and paused for a breather. Hands on my knees, doubled over to catch my breath, I noticed a smattering of little white dots against the dark green grass of the slope across from us.
There they are.
We pressed onward. Eventually, the hill smoothed out to a more manageable degree. By the time we approached the grazing sheep, the land was practically flat. It was as if we were on a tiny shelf on the side of the hill.
All right, then. This is my favorite job.
You have so many responsibilities. How do you manage?
Well, that's true. But to me, this is hardly a responsibility. Just look at them.
She gestured toward the sheep, who had all turned to look at us. They were all chewing grass and seemed to be regarding me with the same kind of disinterest I generally expected from the sisters. They are, a bit scary.
What?
I've never seen an animal up close, and there's just so many of them.
They're sheep. They're nice. Look at that one, he already likes you.
She pointed behind me with her crook. I turned around and yelped. One of the sheep was standing right next to me, looking up at me while continuing to munch on grass.
You can touch him if you like.
No, I shan't be doing that.
Go on, give it a try.
One of the sheep had approached her, and she was patting it on the head, gently. I wouldn't say that the creature appeared to be enjoying it, but at the very least it wasn't attacking Darcy over it. I held my breath and reached a hand out to touch the sheep closest to me. Hello. I rubbed the top of its head. It didn't really seem to care one way or another, but I hadn't lost any fingers. So, what do we do?
This.
We just stand out here.
Yeah. We just want to make sure that nothing attacks them or eats them.
What would do that? up here.
Wolves?
The word sent a chill up my spine. That's terrifying.
It would be, but there's not many wolves around here anymore. I have not seen a wolf in a very long time. And just from afar at that.
Well, I guess that's comforting. It wasn't comforting. Not at all. Knowing my luck, I felt like we were doomed to be torn to ribbons by the first pack of wolves that Darcy had ever seen up close.
Just enjoy them and get in some of this lovely fresh air.
We were sheltered from the wind on this side of the hill, and the air was cool and damp. The rain clouds, however, still threatened above us. In fact, as soon as Darcy had finished encouraging me to take in the fresh air.
Wow. Well, would you look at that?
I couldn't help but laugh.
Yep, just our luck.
Just our luck.
To be honest, I quite like the rain.
I couldn't remember the last time I had been outside in the rain. In my cell, I had always left the window hatch open a crack when it began to rain, just to catch a bit of the fresh scent that followed. Sometimes I would stick my hand out just to get my hand wet, just to feel something curious and different. I felt so thankful every time I caught a few raindrops in my palm, to be alive. Or whenever I felt a sunbeam hit my back when I was hunched over my writing desk. Or when I would catch a fleck of snow and watch it melt into the creases of my skin. That had been enough. That had always been enough for me. I had never wanted to leave. I would have been happy for my whole life in that little room, as long as I could see the rain outside my window. I was glad that it was raining. I didn't want to have to explain the tears rolling down my cheek to Darcy. I like the rain too.
Finally, someone else who agrees. Well, let's get these little beasties out of the rain, shall we?
Darcy began to gently shoo the sheep around with her staff. She pointed at a rickety wooden structure near the slope of the hill.
Just try and get them over there.
I had no idea what to do, especially without a crook of my own. I sort of just gestured at the sheep around me, I suppose. Maybe politeness would serve me where physicality couldn't. Come along, please. Thankfully, it seemed like the flock didn't need me to tell them what to do. Most of the sheep were trotting toward Darcy's structure of their own accord. A few had stayed huddled in front of me, and I wondered if they were pretending to be herded for my benefit. I made it under the wooden shelter just as it started pouring. Darcy was leaning against her crook, surveying the hills in front of us with a serene expression. I navigated through several nonplussed sheep to stand next to her.
Good work.
So, you've been coming out here every day?
Oh, goodness. No. I like to do it, but I'm very, very, very busy. Moira does it sometimes, and also I think Margaret. Catherine would do it as well.
Our Catherine? Oh, well, that's hard to imagine.
No, Catherine the second.
Oh.
They aren't our sheep, strictly speaking. We just like to volunteer, but they're from the village, and this is where they come for transhumans.
What is that?
Oh, well, you have to rotate where the sheep graze, depending on the time of the year, and normally that man James would handle most of the shepherding up here, but, well, you know.
Oh, he's the, accused, yes?
Yep.
How horrible. There was a pregnant pause. Do you think he killed her?
Oh, I couldn't say. Angela found him trying to run from the abbey, and his cloak was covered in blood. I found it. Did you know that? I didn't even know anything bad happened. I was busy putting out a fire in the dormitory and only noticed the cart in the distance out of the window.
A fire? This was the first I'd heard about this detail.
Yep. Someone had put too much fuel in the fireplace and it was blowing all the embers around. It was more of a nuisance than a danger, but it was getting out of hand. Anyway, all the evidence points towards James being a little bastard, but strange things do happen around here, and I'm wary of how simple it all seems.
Like people dressing up as ghosts, you mean? This slipped out before I could register how barbed it sounded. Eustace was Darcy's close friend, and I realized that any story Darcy had been told about last night would have probably been from Eustace's bespectacled perspective. I was relieved then when Darcy let out a guttural chuckle.
Oh, what am I gonna do with you two?
Is she very upset?
She told me all about it, and she sounded really sad. And I told her, well, it did sound like what you did was a bit cruel, and then she got mad at me and went to sleep. She'll be fine, I think. Just give it a few days.
A few days?
Maybe a week. I mean, I can't say for sure.
Is that, like, normal?
Oh, you're not used to people being angry with you.
Well, I'm starting to worry that I'll have to get used to it very quickly.
Eustace, she gets angry really easy. I wouldn't put too much thought into it. She and Adela avoided each other for a whole month once because Eustace said that sherry tasted like trough water. And Adela said, well, how do you know what trough water tastes like? And then a few days later, Adela said, some of the beer that we had in the luncheon tasted like piss. And Eustace was ready with the, well, how do you know what piss tastes like? Catherine made him have a whole sword fight over it.
Wait. Hold on.
With wooden swords.
Oh. But even still.
Yeah, Catherine was a bit obsessed with him. She tried to train us all up as swordsmen at one point. Sword women. However one might say it.
Why on earth would she do that?
Well, as I'm sure you've noticed, there aren't very many of us out here.
Yeah?
And did you know that there's a war going on?
I had heard that.
Well, Catherine wanted us all to be able to defend ourselves, I suppose. Just in case.
Oh, that's rather extreme.
That's what the Superior said when she found out about it.
I've heard a lot of stories about Catherine's interests, but I still would have never guessed that one.
I think it made a certain amount of sense. It was fun, but it did make me a little bit uncomfortable when I thought about it longer. I much preferred it when she was really into winemaking. Or sailing.
Winemaking? Oh, goodness, I take it Marta wasn't too pleased with that.
Oh, on the contrary. Marta was thrilled that someone was as interested in it as her. As far as I know, Marta taught Catherine everything she knew, and then that got Catherine reading about more techniques and so on in the library. And then they would tell Marta about the new stuff. But then one day I stopped, I suppose.
Stopped?
There was a thing with Catherine.
Darcy trailed off in an uncharacteristic manner that surprised me just as much as a sudden yelp would have.
Catherine was unbelievably smart, but nothing ever really satisfied her. She would become intensely passionate about a subject or an idea for several days or weeks or months, and then it would just change completely. Catherine loved so many things aggressively, but it was always just one thing at a time. It was something similar to my interests. I was her best friend, but if it wasn't, well, I felt like I barely knew her. I don't think I'm alone in that assessment. I do miss her, but I sometimes think that she was a bad friend. Not everybody will admit it, but I think a lot of us feel that we were at some point jilted by these random interests. One day you're at the center of her attention, and then the next day she's off somewhere else, lavishing somebody else with the care you thought was just for you.
She sounds like she had a lot of love to give.
She did, yeah, that's true. But she would give it so intensely, I can't blame anybody for feeling, hard to choose a word here.
Jealous?
Jealous. Oh, that sounds so romantic. I think that Catherine often gave people this sense of purpose, and then when she got bored or found a new subject to obsess over, that new outlook just evaporated. Imagine being told you're destined to be queen by someone who starts teaching you etiquette and then starts explaining how to do diplomacy, and then one day they're telling somebody else the exact same story. Catherine liked to get us to plan for these futures where we were musicians or knights or prophets, but at the end of the day, it was always just pure imagination. She would have made a great poet, I think. I don't know, I'm rubbish at poetry.
Was anyone, particularly put off by this? This is the first I've really heard about her habits being so controversial.
I don't know. Some people minded it and some people minded it less. Margaret was a bit stung when she started spending more time on theater than music, I think. And then Angela had this big falling out with her, but I suppose that's not a big surprise. I was never bothered by it that deeply. It just made me a little sad sometimes. We were attached at the hip for a while, and then one day she started spending more time with Margaret and Moira. But that's okay. She was a savant, I guess, but I have my areas of expertise, and I am quite happy with them.
As well as you should be. Your work in the garden is, hard to put into words. Darcy beamed. And you seem to have some connection to God that, I can only hope to achieve a fraction of. I saw you in the garden that day when Eustace was chronicling your vision. It was just wondrous.
Oh, that. You know, it's interesting. That's exactly what Catherine said to me when we were close.
You two spoke about the visions?
Yeah, she had them too. She wanted to compare them and then examine them, and we started working on these tinctures together to try and enhance them, and one day she just stopped.
Stopped having visions?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I remember having this quite vivid one. That's what Eustace told me, at least. Like I said, Catherine started spending a lot less time with me all of a sudden.
Do you know what she saw? Darcy shook her head and leaned on her crook. She looked a little weary.
I barely remember my own visions if Eustace isn't there. I'm not sure anybody was with Catherine when she had the big one, but whatever it was, it affected her deeply. So deeply that I never ever wanted to question it. At the time, I was worried that I upset her, and it took her to a dark place. Whatever it was that she saw there.
How horrible. We watched the raindrops fall in silence for a moment. An impatient sheep nudged my thigh. You know, it's funny. The vision that I saw you have, it was completely true.
True in what sense?
A lot of it sounded like nonsense at first. But then you settled on this fire goat, right before you came back to us.
Is that so?
Yes, and then in that evening I saw,
Eustace's little joke. Oh, by the way, I take it from the sound of things that my little concoction worked.
Yes. I suddenly remembered the little potion I had down before heading to the Misericorde. Oh dear, did I drink too much of it? I ended up finishing all of it before the evening even started. Do you think that that's why I
smacked Eustace? No, I think that the wine had probably taken over at that point.
She looked over at me and offered a sympathetic smile. The rain was beginning to slow.
Eustace will come around.
I hope so. We do have to work together.
You could always try apologizing first.
Would that help? I mean, I wanted to last night, but maybe I should just leave her be.
No right answer here. Just do whatever feels right to you.
I'll try. We urged the flock back out into the field once the rain cleared. The rest of our time there was spent in silence. I could occasionally hear Darcy cooing to one of the sheep, but for the most part, all I could hear was the wind and my own thoughts. I had heard so many things about Catherine now. that I felt I should have a complete idea of who she was. There were people in the Bible who I had less information about, who I could picture perfectly. What they would say if I asked them certain questions, how they would react to different situations. But every time I felt like I was getting closer to knowing Catherine, my image of her was disturbed. It was as if I was staring into her reflection in a pond, but the surface was just being pelted by pebbles. Can't believe I just noticed Darcy's lines never start with a capital letter. I think that's how the voice started. I think having it have no capital letters gave this kind of like daydreamy, distant, absent-minded, but sharper than it seems vibe. And that's kind of how Darcy came to be for me. I think the lack of capital letters is like so crucial in her like subconscious characterization. I think it's a really big deal. Yeah. Where are they sailing? There's water, right? Isn't there water on the one side? Or are they really just in the middle? And maybe they're in the middle of nowhere. I don't know. I got no idea. That whole time I was just thinking about Catherine being the Twitch chatter that shows up for one game and just wants to drop fun facts the entire time. And then as soon as that game is over, you never ever see him again. That's all the entire time of that. I was just thinking about, oh yeah, they're there. Catherine would be the Twitch chatter that would come in and like be the best friend in chat for the 12 hours that you're playing Jack 3, and then you'd never see her again until you're playing another one of her games 2 years later. Got it working the mister? Nice. I like how neurodivergent many of the nuns are. Yeah, and it's nobody is overlapping each other, really. And then you find out she was murdered. All right. Maybe not perfect. The sense of loss I had felt when the superior had told me the news. Desire for justice that I had felt that kept me going after breaking my perpetual vow. Desire for justice I had felt that kept me going after breaking my perpetual vow. Were these feelings based on a lie? Had I simply had the luck of being Catherine's newest obsession before she was taken from me? Could I even consider her taken from me? I thought about the copy of Medea hidden in my room. What had Catherine's plan for me been? What had Catherine's plan for me been? What else would she have told me to make me feel special? Would her visits to the Squint have suddenly ended one day, even if she hadn't died? I was feeling undeniably sour when it was time to leave. We corralled the sheep back into their barn, and then we hiked back to the Abbey in silence. I considered asking Darcy about her visions again, or asking Eustace to see her notes had been a dead end, and I was wickedly entertained by the idea of stepping over her to get what I wanted, a form of retaliation less violent and far more productive than a smack on the cheek. I thought better of it in the end.
Thanks for your help, Sister Hedwig.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a nice change.
Glad to hear it.
She smiled and clasped her hands together. I had no idea how she could have any energy left to work, but I could scarcely finish my goodbye to her before she had fluttered off in the direction of the kitchen. Supper that evening was a quiet affair. Nearly everyone seemed exhausted. I remembered that I was not the only one who hadn't gotten much sleep last night. Eustace didn't look at me once during the entire meal. A small part of me had hoped that she was going to disappear and return with pudding, like she had that one time we had dined together, reveal that her anger had been a front this whole time. The nuns trickled out, one by one. I got up and stretched, still feeling incredibly stiff, and I realized that hiking out to the sheep and staying on my feet all day was not helping my recovery from last night's marathon. At the very least, I hadn't vomited and passed out today. Margaret and Flora were waiting for me when I left the rectory. Oh, hello. Hello, Hedwig. Flora has a question for you. I'm not 5, you know. I was gonna ask anyway. Is something wrong? No, it's just like last night. Did you mean it when you said that you'd, teach me how to paint? I think what she means is, would you be free to teach me how to paint, please? Sure. That. I must admit that I had already forgotten this promise. I felt bad. Even under duress, I shouldn't have made a commitment I could ignore so easily just to make Flora feel better. I had absolutely no business teaching anyone to draw, and I desperately wanted to say no. However, yes, of course. Where would be a good place to meet? I don't know. The library? I thought about the clutter on the desks in the library. Then how about we just do it back in the rectory here? There's a nice big table in there. Sure. Let's meet back here. In a few minutes? I need to go and get my supplies. Flora nodded and skulked off in the direction of the dorms. I hadn't thought about it, but I was going to need access to my old cell. All of my illumination supplies, the brushes, paints, and ink were still in there. My heart sank. I started walking toward the superior's office. I would need her key. Margaret followed. Thank you, Hedwig. I was worried for a minute that we were both going to look like real blackguards. I must admit I'd forgotten all about it, but I am happy to help. Likewise. She was hanging around me all morning, and I was struggling to remember why. Then I remembered that we'd had that little heart-to-heart last night. Oh my. Did you forget all about what had happened? Oh, no, how could I? Some details just took precedence over others. Right. She grinned. I should go check in on the cellars. Make sure that Adela and Marta haven't killed each other yet. Talk to you later, Hedwig. She broke from me at the staircase down to the cellars. I continued to the superior's door and gave it a little knock. Oh, Sister Hedwig. Is something wrong? Not at all. I need you to unlock my cell. Whatever for? It's a long story, but I promised Sister Flora that I'd teach her about illuminating manuscripts. And I only just remembered that all of my tools and paints are still in there. Flora? Taking an interest in something? Goodness, well, we can't let this opportunity go to waste. Give me just a moment. The door closed. Shortly after, it swung open again, and the superior emerged, carrying her ring of keys. The unmistakable jingle sent a shiver up my spine. Oh, I thought that a key stuck. That was Might and Magic flashback horror. Like the enter key just started running, but it was just showing the stairs for a second. We took the stairs up to the second floor and continued down the hall. The huge door that had slammed and scared the sisters all witless was to my left. The wind was shaking it gently as something that big could shake at the very least. The walls around us seemed to pulse and vibrate as the door beat against its frame, as if we were in some great behemoth's lungs. As we turned to the right, I remembered the hideous carving that Margaret had shown me with a jolt. Perhaps we really were in the presence of some monstrous creature. I thought about warning the superior about the evil magic circle I had seen, but I could find neither the words nor the courage to bring it up. It was so dark down here. I realized just how out of their way the sisters would have had to have come to seek my advice as anchoress. We stopped at the door, and I stared at the agioscope as the superior looked for the right key. It was a bizarre device. I had never really looked at it from the outside, but it looked rather cobbled together. The metal frame wedged into the stone brick, and the little door looked ready to rust right off its hinges. I opened it idly and took a peek inside. My heart sank as I realized it was impossible to see through into the cell from the side. There was no way that Catherine and I would have ever been able to see each other. The hole in the wall was big enough to pass the books that I had needed for transcribing through one at a time, and there was a bend in the middle that prevented any direct access. It made me realize just how thick these stone walls were, just how isolated I had truly been. I spoke into the hatch. "Hello? Feeling nostalgic? Ah, here we are." She selected a key and inserted it into the door. The door lurched open. "Oh, how embarrassing. What happened?" Nothing. I just forget which way some of the doors open around here." She stepped inside. With great trepidation, I followed. It was just as it had been left. I took a deep breath. I felt lightheaded. I went to the shelf and... Do you see that thing flickering? Dorm's Dia Hedwig? That's freaky to me. And procured a wooden box from the bottom. I'm not used to that sporadic of motion. I could hear the ink bottles.
How do I know I can trust you?
Rattling inside. That feeling nostalgic is so point-and-click adventure coded. Yeah, dude. "This is all I need. Thank you." "Very well. Shall we?" I nodded. I didn't want to spend any longer in this place. I wasn't sure exactly how close the evil symbol was to my cell, but I wanted to put as much distance between it and myself as possible. I turned around and froze. There was something on my bed that should not be there. The half-finished copy of Matthew was sitting there. Spotted something else you needed? No, just... That isn't where I left this. The book? Are you sure? I'm positive. You must be mistaken. I have the only key for this room, and perhaps you were reading it when Catherine came to collect you and forgot to put it back. That's not possible. I picked the book up and placed it on top of the box I was carrying. What is it? It's the last book that I was writing before, well... I see. Goodness, it's in rough shape. It looks as if it wasn't properly covered in the cart ride up to the Abbey. James's actual crime may have been negligence. Nonetheless, I understand that it must have some sentimental value. May I take it? I don't see why not. You can take anything from here as far as I'm concerned. I see no reason why this room should be locked at all anymore, to tell you the truth. I nodded. I wasn't about to explain that this book appearing on my bed felt like some sort of supernatural threat, but at the very least, unfettered access to my old books was a happy outcome. If I could ever be brave coming back here again, that is. We left the room and traveled back through the halls. The superior left to return to her office, no doubt swamped with clerical work. I stopped off by the dormitory to deposit the bedraggled book in my new sleeping quarters. Bedraggled is a good word. Violated, did it really? I haven't been paying attention to the words at all. I just kind of took it as like building, room. If they get freaky with it, don't hesitate to speak up. Flora looked highly irritated when I finally made it back to the rectory. I'd been worrying about the book, my cell, and that vile sigil all the way there. But my fear was quickly pushed out of my mind by Flora's verbal assault. You said you'd be a few minutes. I'm so sorry. I just had to get to the superior to help me unlock the door to my old cell, and I lifted up the box of supplies and rattled it gently. Oh, fair enough. Well, I brought some parchment. Oh, good. I would have been very embarrassed if I'd had to make another trip. Flora shrugged and hopped to the stairs to the door. She'd laid out 2 piles of simple paper. I set the box down between them and began unloading my supplies. Inks, gold paint, a few horsehair brushes. I pulled a chair out and sat down. Flora followed suit. So, where should we start? That's what I was going to ask you. Well, what's a moment from the Bible that you'd like to try illuminating? I always liked doing the Annunciation, or that might be a little advanced for me. Oh, well, how about a letter? Just one letter? That's going a bit far in the other direction, don't you think? Not at all. There's a whole lot that you can do with just one letter. Huh. Okay then. What letter would be good to start with? I suppose T is always useful. Or A. Flora snickered. Sure. Sure. Let's go with A. You don't sound particularly enthused. I mean, it's a letter. Oh, did I forget to post it? Juno, that's on me. Juno, that's totally on me. I apologize. I forgot to... The top of this stream was... We spent a lot of time just kind of talking. I was in my head a little bit. And I forgot to post the everyone ping in the Discord. I'm so sorry. Good to see you. You didn't necessarily miss much. Yeah, Behemoth was also bugging me for help about the Mister, but I wasn't gonna bring that into it. Didn't see the one from the Twitch app. Okay. Didn't really miss. I mean, you should definitely go watch the first half hour. But we tended to the sheep with Darcy. We kind of learned about Catherine had a tendency for hyperfixation, where she would get super into a topic, and whoever she could talk to about that topic, she would just obsess over for 2 weeks. And then as soon as another topic entered her mind, she would kind of drop that friend, like the I don't want to play with you anymore Toy Story Woody doll picture. And that tendency could have slighted people. And so there's kind of this new rising idea in Hedwig's mind that could somebody have taken her tendency to hyperfixate and then drop off like it's nothing? Could somebody have taken that as a slight and taken it too far to heart? And then Hedwig started thinking about, like, was I just one of her hyperfixations as like an anchoress, you know? Was I like her last connection? And just kind of the guilt and the thoughts around that and the grieving process. And now we are with Flora, because if you remember in the Misericorde last stream when she was drunk, she was like, will you teach me how to paint? And so we're with Flora, learning how to do illuminations of letters. We are illuminating the letter A. In order to do this, we had to go grab all of our art supplies from the anchoress's room. And when we went to the room, the book that we had flung out the window at the very, very beginning of the game was back on the bed. And so this like supernatural fear of like, how did this get back here? This room was locked. The superior was just kind of like, you know, not taking it seriously, saying, I'm the only one with a key, so up to you. That's not for me to worry about. You probably just forgot, you know, just kind of gaslighting the situation. And so now we're back. New song, art time. I think Jesus did it. And welcome in. I hope you're doing well. I rummaged around in my box of supplies and produced 2 hardened charcoal stubs. I handed one to Flora, who raised her eyebrows. Where did you get these? You know, I'm not sure. They got passed to me through the squint whenever I got new supplies. They're much nicer than the ones that I usually have. I didn't know what to say to this, so I just plowed ahead. I took one of the pieces of paper and began to sketch out a square in the top left corner. The paper was rougher and thinner than the parchment I was typically used to. I had only held paper a few times and I had never marked it. That's not an A. Oh, we're just putting a square down so that we know where to fit the letter. Oh. She took up the stick of charcoal and hastily drew a square. It was a bit squiggly. All right. So now what I would do is, well, I wasn't really sure how to verbally describe my process, so instead I began to draw. In a quick swoop, I outlined a large A in my square that touched all edges of the square, but left plenty of room for artistic embellishment. Flora squinted at my page and then attempted to follow suit. And that's a good start. And now what? Well, typically I ink the letter first and then let it set. I don't do much of the detail work with the charcoal. I find it a bit too thick for that. I peered into my supply box, wiggling my fingers. What color would you like your letter to be? Red? Blue? Why are you talking to me like I'm some sort of weird baby? Am I? Yes. You know I'm almost 20, right? You don't need to, do this whole performance for everything. I wasn't aware that I was performing. Right. I had forgotten just how good Flora was at getting under my skin. My empathy toward her outburst in the Misericorde had overridden my usual distaste for her attitude. Just talk to me normally. This is how I talk to people. Normally. Come off it. Everything you say is a question. And you're not even actually asking anything. Oh? Is that how I come across? We glared at each other for a moment, but Flora eventually started giggling. Just like that. Oh. I laughed too. I couldn't help it. Happily, the tension seemed to have been released. I guess that is how you normally speak, huh? You know, I haven't spoken to many people face to face. Oh. Yeah. That makes sense. I feel like a bit of an arsehole now. That's quite alright. Just red or blue? Blue. I passed her the blue and took the red one for myself, then laid out 2 inkwells from the box. I popped the lid of mine open, then procured 2 brushes. Flora was struggling to pull the cork out of her bottle of blue ink. Be careful opening that, it's... She'd managed to get the cork out, but in doing so had jostled the bottle forward forcefully. A splash of blue ink landed on her sheet of paper. Here, let me... I reached over and picked her page up, curling it and shaking it in an attempt to get some of the ink back into the bottle on the table. I was moderately successful, but there was a blue streak left on the paper. Sorry. It's not a problem, it's just be careful. Ink is quite valuable. I said I was sorry. I poured some of my red ink into a well, then dipped a brush in. Try and follow the lines with as few strokes as possible. Oh, I already accounted for that in the first episode, Behemoth. I already said, I'm not, we all have to agree here that this is North England, but I'm not doing all that shit. I'm not doing UK accents. That's for your brain. That way it dries without a messy looking texture. I tried to demonstrate, but the paper was soaking up more of the ink than I was used to, rendering this whole lesson a little moot. I forged ahead anyway until I had a satisfactory letter A on my page. Flora, who had been peering over my shoulder as I drew, left to try on her own page once I had finished. She immediately put too much ink on her brush, and the beginning of her first line became a messy blob as a result. I could tell that she was rushing this part, but I didn't want to frustrate her any further. Not bad. Shall we do some detailing with the gold paint? I could immediately sense Flora perking up. I uncorked the gold and chose a very thin brush. I like to make little patterns, and you can cheat a bit if you focus on drawing on one half like this. You can just copy it onto the other side. Nice. First time painting Warhammer miniatures, I was talking to Snowmans during their stream the other night about Xenogears figures. Square Enix has put out Xenogears figure sets, but you do have to paint them yourself. But like Gears model kits of like Veltal and, you know, Shatan's gear and all of that. And there's like a part of me in the back of my brain that like with my camera should consider it, giving it a try for like when the playthrough is over or something. That's still drawing two really detailed things. I don't think that that's much of a cheat. Just give it a try. Okay. How do you do that though? Are those just like random little lines? I think of them as vines. Huh. Makes sense, I guess. That's a good start. Keep filling it in. I sat and I watched her fill in the square with gold lines. No patterns really ever came together, and I could tell that she wasn't enjoying herself. I tried to avoid staring. I knew that I wouldn't appreciate having my shoulder looked over in my cell, and Flora was liable to bite my head off if I did anything that could be interpreted as condescending. So what got you interested in art? I don't know. Did Catherine draw much? A bit. And she was going to teach you at one point. Before? Yep. What sort of things did she paint? Lots of things. Anything you particularly liked? Sure. There was this one that she showed me, and I really liked it. Oh? Yeah. It was her holding some guy's head. Wait, what? It was so awesome. Whose head was it? I don't know. Goodness. It was probably a Holofernes, though. I breathed a little internal sigh of relief. Of course. Do you like that story? Yeah, it's awesome. Judith is a very interesting book. Have you read the whole thing? No, just the gory parts. I resisted the urge to bang my own head against the table. But you know the general thrust of it, yes? Yeah, she pretends to be friends with Holofernes or whatever and then cuts his head off. Do you know why she cuts his head off? He was a bit of an asshole. How's your drawing coming along? I could hear that my voice was a bit pitchier than normal. Flora leaned back in her chair and gestured at her paper. That's a great first attempt. It was sloppy, but honestly, it wasn't so bad. I was certain I had done worse when I was first starting out. I don't know, it still feels empty. You could maybe add something to one of the corners. Like what? How about a crucifix? Boring. The crucifix is not boring. It's 2 lines. I'm not being blasphemous or anything. I just mean, like, it's not an exciting drawing. I don't know, then. A bird. Or a cat. Oh, yeah, sure, that's a fine idea. Flora leaned forward in her seat again, looking very engaged all of a sudden. Yeah? Can you draw a cat? I don't think I ever tried. How about we both try one separate from the illuminated letters and compare? Sure. We both started sketching with charcoal on our own papers. I tried to remember what cats looked like. I did find them cute, despite their reputations. And I soon realized I only ever seen the one scampering out of the kitchen. Okay, I actually don't know if I've ever seen a cat up close, now that I think about it. Really? Really, I know of them, mostly. There are lions, and there are leopards, and so on in the Bible, but you never saw one before you became a nun? Oh, that was so long ago, I could scarcely remember if I had. So you weren't born here? No. Where do you even come from, then? Trier. Hedwig von Trier? Wow. Never would have guessed from that accent. You sound so very English. I've been here most of my life. Yeah, but like you're twice as old as I am. Some people's accents stick even after they move. Like Adela, Moira, and Catherine too. Well, first of all, I'm not that much older than you. Do you remember much from before you moved? How long ago was it? Almost 20 years ago. Wow. So you were in there for as long as I've been alive. Yes. So you were like 20 before you moved and you still lost your accent? I would have been about 5 or 6. Thank you very much. We got our confirmation. 25, 26 years old, put into a cell as a little kid. Oh. Or, well, 7 or 8 or 9, maybe? Okay, maybe not. It'd be funny if you brought the accent back, just for like a day or two. Just confuse everybody for a little bit. Hello, my name is Hedwig. Something like that. I smacked my charcoal down on the table in exasperation. My cat drawing as finished as it was ever going to get. Let's compare our drawings now, shall we? That is not what a cat looks like. I tried my best. And is that what a cat looks like? It's closer than yours. Yours has this like very, I don't know, human face. So does yours! Whatever. Cat's eyes don't even look like that. Is that so? Yeah, I mean, I think so at least. They never even sit still long enough for people to draw them. Flora, do you know something about that cat that Angela's been chasing for weeks? Look, you have to promise not to tell anyone. I honestly felt relieved. Compared to the secrets I was keeping for Catherine, the superior, and myself, Flora's request was positively quaint. Of course, it's just a cat. Yeah, but nearly everybody else here hates cats. I have to pretend that they're vermin too, but oh, he's such a sweet little thing. He? Oh, the cat? His name is Campy. That's unique. Catherine picked it. Oh. Perhaps I was wrong about the simplicity of this promise if I was tacitly protecting a dead woman's secret as well. The full name's like, I don't know, Campignon, something like that. She liked those fancy classical names a lot. So the cat was hers. Yeah, I guess. I don't know if you could call him anybody's cat. He just showed up one day, and then he took a liking to Catherine, and then she gave him this name and fed him scraps and stuff. And now he's your charge. Yeah. That's sweet. I meant it when I said that you have to promise not to tell anyone. Some of that lot are likely to give Campy a swift kick if he gets too close, and I would be in so much trouble if anybody found out. Don't worry. I can keep a secret. Thanks. She looked away as she said this, and her face showed not even a hint of a smile. But I still felt good. I felt like I had made a real connection. It must be nice to have something to remember Catherine by. Well, shall we finish for now? I guess. Should we plan on meeting up again for more practice soon? She shrugged and glanced at her papers. Maybe. And here, take these. I handed her the sticks of charcoal. For practicing on your own, since you like to draw. All right. Maybe I hadn't made as real a connection as I had hoped. And just let me know if you ever want any other lessons, and we can plan for it. Sure. She scooped up her drawing and stuffed it into her robe and got up to leave without pushing her chair back in. Bye, Hedvig. Have a good evening, Flora. I was left alone to pack my supplies up. I had to resist snapping one of the brushes in half